Wow! Hey, welcome to Academy of Tone episode number 50. And today it's a very, very special day because we are here in Hamburg, Germany, North Germany. My two companions are two North Germans. You can tell two North Germans. They are taller than me, they are tighter than me, they are more metal than me. And these are the holy, how you say, the holy rooms, the room of No.1.
My second home, I would say. Vintage Guitar Lounge and No.1 Guitar Center in Hamburg.
Yeah.
That's where I used to work 5 days a week.
Yeah, I used to work, you still work here, right?
Well.
He is kind of part of the inventory of this music store. I know the music store for, I don't know. I bought my 61 Strat when I was 17, which was last century when I was young. In this store, I paid 2,300 Deutschmarks for it, and now it's worth a bit more. And it's became dirty. Can you show me this one rip-off? And this, by the way, is a brand new fake of my original guitar, which has been aged by my niece. My niece even copied the dirt on the scratch plate. And Leonie is her name, Leonie Blug, and he put all the grinds in here. So people who know me with the dirty guitar, yeah, this guitar is like a week old, but looks very old.
Fantastic job, actually.
Yeah, I think it's her first aging job, and I'm very proud of being the uncle. Yeah. Okay, I have to introduce my guests. There is Lasse Lammert, who is a very famous, internationally acknowledged producer in the genre of metal, and he has been doing quite some work as a producer, but you also worked with other companies on amplifiers, on IRs.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, I met you basically through the test that you've done on the Iridium.
Yeah.
Like a year ago or 2 years ago, kind of.
It must be 2 years, round
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I think so.
When the amp came out. And you do all these fantastic, comparison videos.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you start with the comparison thing?
Well, primarily I'm a nerd, really. That's why I started the whole thing.
I have to admit, this guy is a nerd, he is a nerd, and this guy is a nerd. We only invite nerds. No nerds, no show.
Probably
Okay.
half the audience are
It's
nerds too.
absolutely okay. So you're a nerd.
So yeah, actually I started studying physics. So I came from the nerdish background and then switched over to recording production. And I used to teach at a music college and opened my own studio. And back then, I wanted to like find all the little differences between mics and cables and speakers and where does the tone come from. And on this quest, I compared a lot of stuff. And this is a couple of years back, so hard drive space was quite expensive back then. So I didn't have like tons of hard drives flying about where I could just store my comparisons. So I started uploading them to YouTube, just really just for me as an archive. And so whenever I compared amps or speakers or whatever, I just uploaded it. So I've got it somewhere so I can check back later and well, see what the differences were. So that kind of started taking off at some time. I just posted, different forums, and people just seemed to get not excited but interested in it, because my approach was quite different from what the other YouTubers are doing. Like a lot of them are very entertaining, and I'm not entertaining at all. I'd say I usually don't even show my face. So I just often I wanted to keep it as scientific as possible. So
clean.
So I usually don't play. So I just have like a DI track that I reamp through the amps.
But this is a real good reference, because then you actually have a true comparison. It's not colored in a way with your emotion of the day. So it's kind of, this is the track, and you can listen like scientific to the same track through different amps, through different cabinets, through different mics. And this is actually then can tell you the truth, the naked truth, because there is no other parameters that would distract from the information that you want to capture.
And some people are complaining about that, and that's fair enough, because if you just want to listen to music, it's quite boring because it's the same song over and over again. And I get a lot of comments like, why don't you just record a new song? This is getting boring. Yeah, but this is not supposed to entertain you.
No, it's a reference. It's a reference. Yeah. And I think it's super cool to have guys like you with their own approach. I mean, you know, and there's the room for tons of different YouTubers out there. You know, there's people that are more entertaining and have maybe less deep content, and there's guys out there that have a kind of a mixture. And then there's the guys like you, the real nerds that go all the way, and that end up to be, you know, where you dreamed of. You told me the story just when we met here, that you ended up being in situations that you had kind of dreamed when you were a kid.
Yes, and not really through YouTube, because I wouldn't consider myself much of a YouTuber, because I'm not uploading a lot of videos. I don't care much about subscribers. Subscribe, there's a link somewhere, I guess. But I'm really a producer, and I'm running my studio, and when I started out in just in my local area, Lübeck, recording local bands, my kind of dream was to just be able to sustain myself and to pay rent, essentially. And obviously that's worked out somewhat.
You're still alive.
I'm still alive, and yeah. So and I'm getting in. I've gotten the opportunities to experience a lot of insanely awesome things that sometimes it takes some, like I have to try to step aside and look at myself from the outside, and just to be able to acknowledge it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because like for example, when I've recorded bands in Thailand, I've recorded like in an orphanage in Thailand in the middle of the jungle, where we had like to improvise a studio. We had to put like a big metal pole into the ground just to get some proper earthing. Yeah, because
otherwise it's buzzing all the time.
It was literally like a bamboo hut.
Hey, I have a little story here too, because I've been a producer in the pop world as well, and they hired me to produce a Hawaiian Grammy singer couple, two sisters, like one of those ugly German dance hits. I try to be a producer, try to make the money, then take the money and do my thing as a guitar player. But shall I tell you the truth? We went to the charts. We were at position whatever 80. We were at Stefan's Raab episode. And when I came to the TV studio, and the guys, all the musicians know me as the guitar player, Thomas, you know, and then Klaus Fischer, the bass player, said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm the producer." And hey, you play like that, you play less because this is on television. They had a good live band. And but the funny thing is, they invited me to fly to Hawaii to record there. And this is, I know how this feels. You travel to a different country. They picked me up in their thing, and they had like Elvis on the floor. They were preaching all the time. It's a totally different culture. They had a goat outside the studio, and they had man. I mean, this was an experience. I was hiring a guy that was playing Hawaii steel guitar, and I asked, I need a proper guy from Hawaii, like the real deal. Can you give me somebody that can play that? And the funny thing is, like, I asked the local guys, and they said, yeah, we have one guy that's killer, absolutely killer. So let's call him up. So I called him up and said, hey, this is Thomas from Germany, and I'm producing Pomai and Loeka Longa Kid. That was their name. Everybody knew, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. I need some, traditional Hawaiian steel guitar. And then what happened was, can you come tomorrow? I said, no, tomorrow I can't come. And can you come Sunday?
An Indian guy now.
Similar like that, And then the end is, what's wrong? I said, tomorrow I'm drinking. So, and then was Sunday, and he couldn't come Sunday. So it was taking 3 days for the guy to come. And I tried to be German, and I prepared everything, the song. I made a layout. I asked, can you play this? What happened in the end is like, all my talks didn't work. I had him play as what he felt. It was crazy good. I did some editing, and this ended up on the record, and this was cool. But to cut that long story short, is like, if you have an invitation like that, that's a memory we'll never lose. And I think if you tell me that you have been invited to Thailand or to other countries as well, what were the others?
Well, Thailand twice. The other one was more sophisticated. I'd say we actually had like a villa and pool with a studio. And India, that was really interesting because first of all, I like being outside of my comfort zone when I'm producing. Yeah. Because I want the challenge. If you're not challenged, you need to be kept on your toes to just come up with the best results.
A nerd needs to have the grounding. Yeah. Electrical grounding and mental grounding. And the mental grounding is the challenge. If there's no challenge, it's boring, and you don't feel yourself. In the end, it's the work you are doing is about experience and feel yourself, your own personality, and that only comes out in the challenge. Yeah. Totally agree.
And that's you get to experience the other sides of the countries. Like you're not really in the touristy areas or in the hotel. So I stayed with the band, and the studio was a bit remote. Well, not really remote. Still plenty of people. It's just way outside of the tourist places. Right. So when I left the studio and was just like strolling around in the streets, I had like 20 kids around me because they literally never saw a white person with tattoos, like full sleeves and stuff. Yeah. So I had like 20 kids around me, and stuff like everyone knows, like you're not supposed to drink from the from a glass or something. Like everyone says or tells you to just use bottled water. Yeah. Not even that you could do there, because they were so poor, some of them, that they actually super glued that little clicky ring back onto the bottles and stuff. Ooh. So I had the band really look out and take care of me.
To get fresh water.
Because I had no idea how to do that. Like I just grab a can of Coke and drink from it, or beer or whatever, and my lips touch the can. It's not an issue at all. Yeah. You can't do that there. And those little small things that are so normal there, but really aren't normal here. That's quite interesting, and it gives you a different perspective. Like Thailand, for example, is often a story. Like we all sat in this outside area where we had food and dinner, and there were like literally bugs dropping from the ceiling into our food. And
protein.
Like, the first day or two, you were like kind of complaining or like, oh, not eating. But after a while, just you see all the kids, they're like 4 years old or 5 years old, and they deal with it. Yeah. And you're like, I'm this almost grown man back then, and you've been such a wuss about it. For example, there was like an ant was like an ant road, like a path of ants across my bed.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't move. You can't move them. So I actually ripped the like the foam, the acoustic foam from the makeshift studio at night and put it on the ground so I could sleep on the foam instead of the bed because there were the ants. Yeah. And stuff like that was experiences that you only get if you're taken and outside of your comfort zone in different positions and places.
Okay, so you've done those kind of crazy producer jobs, but you do a lot of other things now, like on Wacken, the famous festival, which is also in North Germany, but it's not like you are from Lübeck, and this Wacken is what, 1.5 hour?
Yeah, about that, a bit less maybe.
Yeah, drive. And when you were like a teenager, did you go to Wacken?
All the time.
And be a fan?
Absolutely. My first Wacken was 96 or 97, I think. And it was amazing. Like, I was 16 years old. And we were camping just outside the stage area. So now you've got your camping grounds like 27 hours away.
Yeah.
And it was insane. It was the best thing ever. And I was there as a fan, and I saw these bands that I looked up to and loved, and all this hasn't changed now. I still love the bands, and I still like going there, but it's different now. It's becoming a job. Some of my bands are playing every year. Like last year would have been 4 or 5 of my bands
that you produced.
Yeah. So I'm there as I hang on, but also as there's this metal battle lounge, it's called. It's backstage where industry professionals are
teaching.
No, that's the music camp. That's the next thing. But yeah, sitting backstage to be, if artists have there's this metal battle, which is like a contest for young bands.
Right.
And so they have someone to go to ask about studio, about touring, labels. So there's business professionals they can talk to. So I'm often there, sitting there and hanging out backstage, and that's quite nice to see how it started like 20 years ago, more than 20 years, 25. I'm old. Years ago.
And tell me.
I'm still going there every year, just in a different function.
Yeah, and the thing you're doing lately there is like you help young bands to kind of develop. They have kind of a program there where they kind of form young bands, and where they where somebody teaches them, and then at the end of the festival they all kind of play. Is this what's going on?
Yes, yeah. It's not directly the same time as Wacken. It's usually a week or 2 later or earlier.
Okay.
Because in the artist village, it's called the backstage area. That's where they put up the tents, like big tents, and they have like campfires and stuff.
Right.
And there's anything between like 18 and 150 kids, aged 12 through 19 or something. And so the first day they're all in the auditorium, and just form bands like randomly, more or less. Mm-hmm. Some are quite experienced, like played guitar or have been playing guitar for like 3 years, and some are just have never touched an instrument. So those people that don't know each other or had never met each other before just form a band now. Mm-hmm. And then they've got 1 week to write and record a song, and at the end perform it. And they've got help from producers, which I'm one of, and also music coaches and guides. Like there's usually it's musicians from famous bands, like Nibs is there every year, the bass player of Saxon, and Alestorm is there for violins and strings. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great crowd and great experienced musicians and helping out the kids, and that's just insane to see what's even possible. Like in 1 week from this bunch of clay, really, that people that never touched an instrument or maybe played bass before but now have to play drums because they need a drummer in that band.
To have too many bass players? Or,
yeah. And then they've got 1 week, and not even full days, just half a day. The other half is like kayaking or whatever.
Yeah.
So they've got like 5 half days to write a song, to record it professionally, and then to perform it
in front
on a stage in front of
all
the people and the family.
That's cool.
That's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, I think this is such an important thing to work on. Younger people to bring to music. I mean, today we have a situation with tons of hobbies available. I mean, you open your smartphone and then you can do gaming or whatever. And there's some beauty in music. And I'm missing a little bit the good old spirit from, oh, this guitar, by the way, is from 1958. But I've a few words in a minute. The old spirit, when I grew up, they had the Jugendzentrum here in Germany where people came, and then there were kind of sessions, and you have to experience yourself playing music with other people. It's a social thing. It's a thing with yourself. I mean, it's like so many dimensions that you can touch by doing music with yourself, with others, and I think it's very important. And I mean, hearing that at Wacken things like that are actually happening, it's so cool. Yeah. I'm totally about that stuff. I've done also little things similar many years ago with young bands in Koblenz, where I was kind of teaching them, being the role of a producer, and then listening to them, and also recording like a band camp kind of thing. I think it's so important that the younger generation also gets the chance to do something and to work towards something important for them, because for them it's the biggest thing to play in front of the audience. Practicing is one thing, but being on stage is another thing. And wow, I think it's so important. Okay, just before we continue, this guitar is this is my first flying V, which I actually don't own. It belongs to Rudolf Schenker by the Scorpions, and as I said, it's a 1958. It's worth about, they told me, between $350,000 and $500,000. I hope I have no strap. There is no security lock. It's just a beautiful guitar. And we are nerds. And this is, let's put it that way. This is my first V experience.
Not the worst.
It's not the worst.
Experience.
It's my... what can I say? It sings, huh?
That's what they mean when they say tone for days. That's tone for days.
That's tone for days. And hey, we are playing at like living room volume here. We have this tiny little studio monitor and no guitar cabinets in the room. So so that's the thing why I'm here. I will continue to make a few more videos for the world of vintage guitars. That's something I started with No.1 Guitar Center, and tomorrow we will shoot, I don't know, 17, 18 or 20 guitars.
No, you don't shoot 20 guitars, you shoot them one by one. And you know what? Friday you will play this guitar.
Oh, this is a 50, what is it?
58. That's on the Reverb shop.
Ah, okay.
If you want to see that guitar prior, look at our Reverb shop.
Okay, for me that's the kind of thing about my job. I mean, is it a job? Well, I was dreaming about all that guitars. The good thing is I can play them, I don't have to own them because I don't have the money. You know, I mean, Rudolf Schenker has the money, and I'm happy that people got the money, that the guitars are somewhere here connected, and I have the pleasure to play something like that and get inspired and know, you know, kind of like what time it is when it comes to guitar, what is possible and what is the beauty of vintage guitars, you know?
It'd still be nice to own it though.
No,
Well, if
the thing is, this guitar is not for sale actually. It's just a loaner for the videos, because Rudolf knows, yeah, well, it's cool to have
What a nice guy he is.
a good video with somebody who can actually play the instrument and show what the guitar can do.
yeah. Okay. I know why Jimi Hendrix played one of those when he was playing Red House. So there are guitars besides Strats, I have to admit, that have some mojo. Okay, that's the little thing that I hold in my hands. But back to Lasse. You also have worked with, I see your guitar is a Ziggy Brown.
That's a Ziggy Brown.
Ziggy Brown is a guitar luthier manufacturer near Stuttgart. Then, I mean, we Germans all know Ziggy Brown, and he's mainly known for making, you know, the metal or the modern stuff.
Yeah, right.
Lately, he's also doing relic instruments and stuff. And
Actually, my first Ziggy Brown guitar was a Telecaster, a relic one.
ah, okay.
Wonderful guitar and sounded so good. And then we started talking about the signature guitar, and this was 2.5 years ago. So it took quite a while, because I've always been a fan of the Explorer shape and the Kelly shape, and I didn't want to blatantly copy it. And it might look like a Kelly on the screen, but it's actually closer to an Explorer shape-wise, with some special features. And I had my mate Dan Goldsworthy. He's an artist. He works with a lot of bands I'm producing, and I asked him to come up with a design for the guitar, and he did a wonderful job. I think he did like everything I wanted it to be, and yeah, it's got a couple of unique specifications. Is it okay if I just talk about it for a minute?
Absolutely, yeah. It's on. I mean, we all talk to nerds, you know.
Yeah, right.
And we might have different style of nerds, but for me, it's important that, you know, like real nerds in the metal world can talk deep shit about.
Let's hope it's deep now.
It is deep, because I played the guitar. I can see, you know, there's a little scalloping on the upper side of the frets, which makes total sense to me.
If you can play it, unlike me, I just played like all thing 1 fret sharp earlier, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, there's progressive scalloping. So it starts here just on the high strings, and then it just goes up. I don't know if you can actually see it in the close-up. Can I like move it around a little bit? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to believe me, but I'm rarely lying. Sometimes, not this time.
Not this time.
This like progressive scalloping, and just goes deeper and deeper and higher, and from what's this, like the 17th fret on, it's all the way
through,
right,
from both sides of the neck.
And one specific request I wanted, or I had, was like those old 90s ESPs, M1 and those metal guitars. I noticed I like them better than most modern metal guitars, and especially those. There are a lot of, like in the last 10 years, a lot of good luthiers started making guitars, especially in the metal scene, and I never really dealt with them much. And my theory was, if you look at all those great looking and great sounding guitars, they usually have the bridge pickup fairly close to the neck. So there's a big gap here. And that gives you like big chords and stuff. And if you play open like genty single string stuff, that's good too. But I want the like
The fast
stuff, like I'm a kid of the night. I want this like the palm mute. So I asked Ziggy to put the pickup as close to the bridge as possible to get this tight palm muted sound.
Yeah, okay.
So that worked out lovely. And a few other special things, like the steel frets, obviously, because why not?
Steel frets, yeah.
Steel.
Well, they don't wear out so fast.
Exactly.
I had steel frets on my Strat for like 1 decade, and then me, the vintage guys, I went back for the standard, whatever, Dunlop 6105s or whatever, because they're a bit smoother. But I'm happy that I used the steel frets because it made my guitar last longer.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it gives a bit of a brighter edge to it.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Fishman pickups in here.
The Fluence pickups.
Fluence pickups.
So can you explain about the Larry Fishman is the guy? I know Larry for many reasons.
From acoustic stuff mainly, I guess.
I know him even as a manufacturer. We met in China at factories. We met in the US. He's from the US, and he's I would consider him a long-term friend, sharing all his knowledge. Very nice guy. So Fishman pickups.
Different concept. I don't want to butcher it, but it's not like wound coils like in other pickups.
It's layers.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like a PCB. You know what a PCB is? It's the stuff that's used in amps, where they put the components to. And in modern days, they found out they can make 1 layer, they can do 2 layers, 3 layers, 5, and then they came up with the technology that they can
printing a pickup essentially.
Yeah. And they have so many layers, and like what used to be a winding is now a layer, and the process is super consistent.
Yeah, it enables them to not be bound to those limits that the traditional pickup has.
Vintage pickups, you know, I'm
sorry, it does have a volume pot.
Yeah, you know, vintage pickups. I'm all about the vintage gear on the one hand. Why? Because there is some, I would say, uncontrolled, funky stuff happening with vintage magnets, with vintage wires, with the coating of the wires. We all are still kind of exploring why the good old pickups, like on this 1958 guitar, make such a tone.
Well, some of them do, some sound shit.
Yeah, some sound really shit. They are like dead and dull, but this is an example of a guitar that has some mojo, that sounds alive, which is a good instrument. Which is not saying that there are modern instruments that also have magic. You know, sometimes I get lost too much in the stuff, but I have to admit there are some vintage instruments that, for me as a vintage lover, they have the mojo of being played on top of their quality of good wood, good pickups, and whatever. And that's hard to find. And of course, when I get a good vintage instrument, I will, you know, all the lousy vintage instruments were probably put into pieces, ended up as whatever, Frankenstein casters or whatever, or got destroyed by Pete Townsend, I hope. But that's the world in the vintage world. There's different parameters. But on the other hand, it is a total different world when it comes to the modern world and to like the approach to good metal tones. You want a controlled low end.
Exactly, yeah.
The tight low end that does the gallop.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I do love vintage guitars and vintage pickups and passive, and everything's got the place. It's just for metal, to cut through a dense metal mix and to have this tight low end, I don't need this. Like we all, for example, use a
tube screamer.
This guy here, tube screamer. Not we all, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
In front of high gain amps, and people ask like, if the €4,000 amp or $2,000 or whatever can't do it without a pedal, it's a shit amp. No, it's not, because we're not using the pedal to distort the amp. We're essentially using a floor of the pedal. like the tube screamer has got a design flaw. It rolls off bass, and so we're kind of using it as an EQ in front of the amp to cut bass, so that the preamp stages, the gain stages,
It's not overloaded with
so they
the low
don't get
mud.
muddy, and then you add the bass later, and you get the tight low end. And it's similar with the
Fluence pickup.
Fluence pickups. Well, Fluence, they do have more vintage voiced pickups too, the classic open coil and stuff. They've got a range of stuff there. But yeah, that's essentially this absolute control that enables us, as producers or metal musicians or whatever, to have control over the mix, because we've got to deal with so many elements. It's not like we don't have a blues trio or like a 5-piece. We've got 180, 250 whatever tracks with
layering
and layers and stuff, and
it's so dense.
On top of it's so dense.
And so the challenge in your mix is to cut through, right? Or what is the biggest challenge in a metal mix?
Yes, definitely clarity and punch, while still retaining the element of aggression and danger. Because I think if it's too polished, it kind of loses the edge and and it's not dangerous anymore.
Okay.
And, so
you have to feel still the energy, but for my experience being a pop producer, I learned that the quality is reducing or getting rid of all frequencies and energies that don't contribute to the character that you want to show. So anything you can take away which is not sacrificing the character gives more room for the rest.
Yeah.
And that helps the mix.
Absolutely.
So that's the one thing. And when it comes to guitars, it's like having a tube screamer gets rid of this ultra fluffy, bluesy bass low end, which I love sometimes, because I can fill those spaces because there's nobody but me and there's only one guitar track. In the metal mix, how many layers do you do?
It really depends. Rhythm guitars is 2 or 4, but then there's lead guitars on top, and there's often the bass is distorted to cut through, and they've got the orchestra, and you've got tons of stuff. Yeah. So, and I think part of the job of the producer is to know what to get rid of and what not.
Yeah.
Like if you play in a rock band or in a metal band and you've got a guitar like this with which noise or play one note, you don't want to mute all that.
Yeah.
It's going to be dead. This contributes to the sound and to the singing.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't make any noises.
Yeah.
So it just contributes to that, and it's part of the tone. But in a metal mix, I take like a piece of tissue or toilet paper and just weave it around the high strings for rhythm guitar tracking so they don't vibrate. I put something on here. If it's a Floyd Rose guitar or a tremolo guitar,
you block that. Yeah, everything that can make extra noise, but the strings should be muted. I mean, of course, all the playing technique is already there. That's the first challenge, how to play.
I think palm use is so important. So many guitar players are like great lead players and stuff, but there's so much of the tone going on in the palm mute. Like how hard you press, where you press, and that's a ton of tone there.
Yeah.
That's often overlooked, and that's really part of the challenge to get that tone right and to know when to cut stuff out and when not to. And I wouldn't do it by default. I wouldn't just get rid of everything that's not needed, because sometimes you later find out it's going to sound sterile and dead. So it's a bit of experience, I guess, to know when to cut stuff out.
Yeah.
And when to leave.
We have a short little video that shows you in your studio. Maybe
Sexy.
Surprise for you. We've been online and found something. Can we see this? So we see you at
Asking
work.
me? Oh yeah, well, I guess you have to now.
Hey, what's up? I'm Lasse Lammert from LSD Studios, Germany, and you're checking out my signature album.
I'm an amp guy. I've got like all the tube amps here. I wanted this straight, pure tone of the German-made amps. So I've got all the big German amp manufacturers in there. I've got amps from Diezel and Earforce and Driftwood and Wagner. Guitar tone is not just the amp or the cab, it's the chain of everything. Starting obviously with the amp, then we've got the cab and the miking, which is a very, very important part of the guitar tone.
Yeah, so this was Lasse in his LSD studio, which is not a drug studio, it's Lasse Sound Design.
Lammert Sound Design.
Lammert.
Wearing the same shirt, by the way, just noticed.
Yeah, cool.
It's one of two I own.
Yeah. So one thing I saw in your studio, you have tons of amps.
Got a couple.
Yeah, I think they're, yeah, and of course they are all focused or mainly focused on the metal thing.
Mainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Not all of them though.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of good vintage Marshalls, or I don't know what's vintage now, but I've got like a 75 stock JMP and a Super Lead and some old 800s and good old Marshall stuff that I love a lot. And
Isn't it funny? You don't know me that well, but I have about 10 vintage Marshalls, or even 20. I don't know. Part of them are spread in the world because it's like, for me, they are magic because they cut through the mix. They have a character, and to me, it's my weapon of choice for so many things. I can tweak them in a way to be more focused. When I was doing session work in the studio, I had a few mods on my Marshalls to make them tighter for the classic chord stuff. On the other hand, I have some, they have a bit more compression, they make more the bluesy feel, but somehow they are big sounding. And they have an organic quality that I love so much. That's what I love about the vintage Marshalls. There's some, for me it's like brown sauce, it's like a good gravy stuff that you get with a good meal. It's like, there it is.
I think they make you a better player, really, like especially in the metal world. Like all the metal guys I look up to, like I mean, if you play fast leads and stuff, that's amazing, it's great, but I've always looked up to the guys who had like good rhythm guitar playing, like James Hetfield and Gary Holt, and I think a lot of that has to do with that they grew up with Marshalls, and you just have to play different. You just have to really dig in a bit to get that tone.
You work the tone,
yeah.
And me being a Hendrix fanatic in a way, I formed my own three-piece band with a non-master Marshall to learn how to play like him. I mean, I was killing everybody in the little pubs where we played with a 50-watt Marshall. With 100, it was not even possible. But singers were yelling at me because I was way too loud. But I learned how to tame that beast. And I find it so good to hear that this is the same thing in the metal world.
Absolutely.
And so it's like a horse that can ride different styles.
The thing with old Marshalls, in my opinion, is, well, the dangerous music thing. It becomes more adrenaline driven. It is more like masculine playing, and it is a little more dangerous for my ears. Tube screamers, whatever boosters, crappy wah pedals, maybe even noisy vintage guitars, maybe super tight modern guitars, but if you have a JCM 800, super lead, super bass, and some good pedals, or even no pedals in some cases, and you can play. That's for me the perfect metal rhythm guitar for the old school styles.
Yeah.
And it is kind of, well, non-produced in that form. And you, as a producer, you probably cut a lot of low end and fetch out the right upper mid frequency.
Depends. Like I try to get the tone from the source as good as possible. I usually don't rely on EQ. I rarely do any more EQ on guitar tracks than high pass at around 60 hertz, where there's nothing below that, and maybe 12K, there's nothing above it.
Yeah.
And every now and then I might notch a tiny bit around the like 3.3 vintage 30 spiky area, like a tiny 1 dB, very narrow notch. But I usually like to not use any EQ. And because if you listen to the guitar track soloed, then it might actually take your head off. But in the mix, it just works.
Perfect.
You don't need that. If you make it too smooth and too polite, it's not gonna
cut through
out anymore.
Yeah.
And like you said, with an old Marshall and just a tube screamer or Boss Super Overdrive, if you can't get a good metal tone with that, it's certainly not the amp. Like you don't even need like a high output or active or whatever pickup. If you got a Les Paul and a PF type pickup and an old Marshall and a tube screamer or Boss Overdrive or something like that, you should be able to get good metal tones. And if not, well, work on your right hand.
Yeah. Well, the tone is in the fingers, or it's still the player a lot. Hey, we have to introduce Nils Finkeisen too. Nils is kind of doing three things. touring with bands. I mean,
From time to time, at least.
from time to time. I mean, these days nobody's touring. Yeah. There's Kingdom Come, the Krupps, and you had some other projects.
Yeah.
Then he is working at this store, and working at a store like No.1, which is kind of one of the finest stores. You know, it's like a candy store for guitar players.
It could be worse to work here. Yeah, it is nice to be surrounded by old and expensive and exclusive instruments on the one hand.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if it comes to being a musician, it doesn't help. It's nice to have it around you. It's nice to have access to all those old instruments.
Have you ever been tempted to buy one of those really?
Okay, I started here in 2019 after 16 years at AMP1 and in the bunker here in Hamburg, in the bigger mainstream store, so to say. I started here, and on day number 3 I bought my first vintage Ibanez Les Paul style from '74, the black one with a bolt-on neck.
Okay, how much was it?
450, 470.
Okay, cool. So you're not in this price range?
No, but that's. You start to work here, and what's happening is you're your own best customer.
Yeah, sure.
Right from the start.
Yeah.
2 days later, I bought a 90s Ibanez RG. That's Andreas Kloppmann right now. You maybe have seen that ugly sunburst RG.
Yeah.
That was my second, like, customers coming in, I want to get rid of this guitar. I buy it. It happens. I usually don't buy instruments in that price range. No,
me neither. I mean, if you're not the real famous rock star like Rudolf Schenker, who had million sellers in the past, I think the whole music industry is not making that much money anymore compared to like 20, 30 years ago. When I was still touring with Tic Tac Toe and Purple Schulz, I had like 1,000 a night, you know. Hey, you play a show, 1,000 in your pocket. Next day, another 1,000. There's a good month. I mean, you could make a living just by being the tour guy in one band. And then, besides that, I was a session guy. I made another 1,000. So all the money that I still have invested in my company BluGuitar, which is now all gone into products. Because I'm a nerd too, I'm not the best business guy. But I'm happy about all that. So it was never about the money, but I know the days where you could actually make good money and good living being just a musician. These days, you know, we don't make any money from Netflix, Spotify, you know, from all the streaming things. It's a rip-off. Sorry, I mean, it spreads the name of the band, it spreads the artist, but the artist and the producer and everybody that puts in the money to produce the music doesn't get enough revenue, not enough back. And that is actually killing the quality in music. Somehow we are in this phase, and I hope we will get to a next level that will be better for musicians again. That's a hope. I don't know how we get there, but this is big politics. If somebody has the right party that I make my cross with this kind of thing, I'm all for you. But anyway, back to Nils. The third thing he is doing besides being the guitar player in touring bands and being in the candy store, being tempted all days, he also writes for a very, very famous German magazine called Gitarre and Bass, Gitarre und Bass in German. Being an editor is another tempting thing because you have to test a lot of gear. And
I could immediately tell you what is coming in the next issue or in the next issue afterwards, but...
Okay, but can you choose what? Yeah.
Kind of. Sometimes I can choose what I have to write, or what I could write, and I'm totally free to write what I think is my objective opinion about the product. I can choose from a pool of different products. from time to time they ask me to write about a product I don't really appreciate, and I like not every single Chinese-made, cheap, crappy, whatever product, and then it's difficult to write.
Yeah.
But you know, I've been writing stuff for 2.5 years now, and that means 1 to 4 articles, tests, reviews per issue. I've done a lot of cool amplifiers, like the Driftwood, not the Mini Nightmare, but the Darkest Nightmare. And actually the
big brother.
BluGuitar AMP1 Iridium thing for Gitarre and Bass as well. And I love the product, and you can definitely read it. But I love the product. If you're looking close, it's hidden.
Yeah, I mean the thing about if you are an honest guy, and this I think you cannot cheat.
Yeah.
You cannot cheat. I mean, nobody is an actor. I couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. And even sometimes, you know, when I do my, you know, I'm excited about my products, but sometimes I have to say, you know, man, this amp is killer. It's maybe better than my amp. But that's the moment where my life has a new, there's a new challenge. And I like those challenges. So if somebody has something like, man, you know, you amp1 is shit, and I have something that is killer, contact me. I want to know, because that's the challenge. I mean, I don't stop here. After, you know, the silver one and the black one, there will be a future.
Make a purple one, I'll buy it.
Yeah, let's see.
The thing with Gitarre and Bass is they do pay me to be honest. And that's a totally different thing than being a YouTuber who is paid by getting the device
for
he's
free,
just playing
or money for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wouldn't write for other magazines. I wouldn't do the YouTube thing if it comes to product presentation, because I don't think it's worth all that. I'm looking at YouTube videos, I'm watching whatever is online, but they are rarely really objective and honest.
Yeah.
See, I'm not getting paid, so
that's good. By the way,
examples, and your videos are pretty honest because you're doing 1-by-1 shootout in comparisons.
Yeah. Plus, I don't consider myself a YouTuber. I'm just like
and that's the point.
So if it's shit, I either say it's shit, and I'm fine with that, or I just don't do it, because why would I spend hours on a product that I hate?
You don't even comment it. From time to time, you just put on a video with your single micing SM57 on Vintage 30 technique, like
says
usual day.
That's
John Brown just wrote.
Yo, John.
Yeah.
Hey.
The reamping riff.
Yeah.
That's what you just said, and that's so honest, because you just can compare all your videos from the last 10 years. And I really love your Iridium video compared to.
I was blown away by the amp, to be honest. I really liked it.
Second best signal in your videos. If you ask me for preference, after the Bockner, that would be my top.
That's
which
the
Bockner
video.
was it?
The Überschall revision green. It's got the most views by far.
Yeah. To be honest, I know Reinhold for many years, even before the company Bogner existed. I met him at Andy Brower's studio rentals in LA when he moved from, where's he from, Ulm or something, like in South Germany. And he was the repair guy in that shop. And he had, of course, an 800 modded. And you know, this was his starting point.
I used to have an old 800 modded by him when he was still in Germany.
Oh, so
I think it's called the Snorkeler modulator. I think it's the one that Alice Chains used. So very mid-rangey, and it had like a tone stack of Silver Jubilee, I think it was. But instead of a logarithmic mid-pot, it had a linear mid-pot, and so it was the other way around. It was very weird. So all the mid-range movement happened between off and 1. So I changed that port eventually at some point. It was a great amp, and unfortunately I sold it. But it's also on my YouTube channel somewhere. Can find it.
That's a good thing. We can kind of preserve some of the old stuff on YouTube. I'm not making any advertising for YouTube, but we can share that. And I like the idea of sharing knowledge, because where do you get information? And that's the good thing. on YouTube we have tons of people, and you can choose what to watch and what not to watch. And if you are not too stupid, you will find out who are the hot guys and who are the cheesy guys. So at least it's there, and you have the choice.
And it's so quick. Not only about music and guitars. Like
Anything.
if you want to learn how to tie a fishing knot, you can do that on YouTube.
I had a problem. I was on vacation in Barbados, and I lost the key. How
to break into a house in Barbados.
Yeah. I had Wi-Fi. I had my mobile phone. And I learned it with my girlfriend had some what is for the hair Spange, whatever thing to fix the hair. Hey, it took me 15 seconds, and the door was open. So forget about all the security locks. Anyway, there's a lot of YouTube information out there, and if you find the right one, it actually works. By the way, we have a little video from Nils that I wanted to show you, so we know that Nils is the real deal kind of guy. Let's see his video about being a musician. Yeah, Nils Finkeisen. Yeah,
that's two funny examples. One was Die Krupps, and that's probably the most brutal thing I have ever done.
And I mean, the thing I learned about people that do brutal music, they are always the sweetest guys. And that's the thing that I learned about metal. The harder the music, the sweeter the guys. Anyway.
Yeah, the funny thing is, you got to play downstrokes all the evening at shows. Just like machine gun, downstrokes, downstrokes, downstrokes. It's so exhausting, and it's so much fun. It's so masculine, it's adrenaline driven, and it's fun to play with those guys on stage. And I miss it. The last show was in December 2019, and the band is awesome if we are live on stage. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's really, really fun to play with those guys, and the audience is cool, and we're all having a party.
Yeah,
women are dancing on the first.
Oh, that's always a good sign. Yes, that's something to look at.
The other stuff was pretty nerdy. My old progressive rock band, Eden Circus. I'm still pretty proud about what we achieved back then in 2013 and 14. We self-produced that album. And that's more what I would do if it comes to music from my heart. Progressive style. It's more like Tool, more like Opeth, more like Porcupine Tree. I'm not the die-hard super metalhead. I was listening to Mark Knopfler in the car, hi-fi.
And you liked it?
And I love it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong about it.
On my way to this video, I was just having the latest Mark Knopfler acoustic guitar stuff. And I love it.
Well, we all have different sides. That's cool. And there is the side of you in Kingdom Come.
Yeah. That was a great time. I learned a lot. Lenny Wolf here from Hamburg. He's actually my neighbor, and he has I know him since I was 19, and back then in 2003, 4 maybe. He was like, okay, one day I'll ask you to join my band. I see what you can do on your instrument. You're still too young, but like 15 years later, my cell phone. Yeah, it's Lenny. I need you.
And then?
And it happened. And actually, I didn't know how important Kingdom Come was for the little older generation of guitarists here in Germany, as well as for the American classic rock listener. They have been a huge impact over there for many, many guitarists and musicians. I wasn't aware of what heritage Lenny Wolf from Hamburg has. But Lenny decided to quit the band in 2016, 17. Yeah. And so all the German guys from the band are out, and the American guys, they are still doing the band with James Kotak, former Scorpions drummer.
Ah, yeah, this guy, yeah.
Yeah, he was the first drummer in Kingdom Come, and then James
Except
was
the blonde hair.
Yeah.
He came after Hermann Rärbel, who is the original old drummer of the Scorpions, who comes from my hometown. And so I played was it January 10th of January 2020, just before the COVID thing started. We played Beethoven with the orchestra.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, this was fun. A real 80-piece symphony orchestra. And we did our own arrangement. We have another episode about that where I invited one of the guys from the classical orchestra, Martin Hennecke. By the way, I think it was episode 4 or 5 back. We are 50 now, maybe 46. You'll find that. Anyway, a little sidestep. Yeah, so when it comes, now I'm back to the toner thing and the amps. When it comes to the metal side of tones, what are the parameters that are important to you?
tightness.
Tightness.
The same as with Lasse. I love to have a Telecaster in the mix for rhythm guitars. I love to have a sports guitar as well, a modern 24-fret thing with Floyd or not Floyd, with modern humbuckers. And I think I try to achieve best of both worlds with this mixture of instruments. Vintage guitars are more masculine sounding in metal context, but they are very raw. They are very uncontrolled on the bass department, and they are very, well, hard to mix them in a dense mix, as you said.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for the most modern sound in the modern instruments and the most retro sound in the old guitars, like in this old Telecaster.
By the way, I love this Tele.
I love it. I love it as well. It's my best guitar.
Wash your hands more often, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, we both vintage guys love. When we are vintage, we love dirt, you know.
The thing with the Tele in the metal context is it is reacting towards what kind of plectrum you're playing. And I don't know if I can show, since I have this classic rock sound. Yeah, we'll try the other amp.
Okay, we have a bunch of amps. For the first song where we all three played, we played through some Mercury editions, and now I'm in the switching system, and I have the. This is now my Mercury. With okay.
This is an ordinary Jazz 3 plastic plectrum, and it's slightly mellow. This is the ugliest, tickiest.
Okay. Question, or just to make clear, this is a 50 whatever Telecaster.
52-ish puzzle, whatever. It's half a vintage guitar.
Yeah, and it's using single coils.
Yeah.
Aha.
6.7K on this bridge pickup, so nothing like 16K super monster output.
Yeah.
It's all in the technique.
So if you want to sound like metal, it has to start with your playing technique like metal.
You got to play like metal.
And then, of course, you know, a guitar will enhance that when it has certain parameters that focus the stuff that you want for metal.
Yeah, plus we've got all these high gain amps. We've got tons of gain. We don't need distortion from the pickups.
Yeah.
And the thing is with these high gain pickups with like 16K, whatever, like millions of windings, the impedance gets higher too, and it cuts a lot of high end. So you get a lot of output, but it becomes duller.
Yeah.
And why? I don't need the gain from the pickup. So vintage pickups like that, be it humbucker or single coils too,
They work.
They work because I've got the high end on the cut and the bite, and then I get the gain from the amp.
And I mean, there is no need for the gain from pickups, because in the electronics there's a gain here, there's a gain there, there's a gain everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
I want the tone from the pickup and the
Yeah.
guitar and the gain from the amp.
That's a very good message for me, because that makes sense in my world as well. Because from my experience, it's the same. Like when I have when I do something out of balance in a way, I take away the character. You know, if a pickup is so overwound, it's not flexible anymore. It's just a one-trick thing, and it's missing something. It's like in one corner only. So a thing should always be. When I designed amplifiers, I learned if I go too extreme in a certain way, I cut the range of expression that I could have with a sound if I would be more natural and not too overprocessed. So my cooking recipe for a good guitar tone is to kind of arrange it in a way that it's natural for every part in the signal path, for every stage, and not having one thing crazy. You know, as you said, there's no EQing on your tracks, or just a tiny little, you know, notch 3 point some kilohertz where it's a little bit out. And that's all it takes if the sound character is right. And I believe you do similar things with other elements, and don't have one peaky, because it's not musical. It's
like Nils just said, or was about to demonstrate when I interrupted him, sorry. Like those little tiny differences, like the pick. That's the thing that is so important to really find all those little things. The pick, the distance to the pickups, and all that strings to pickups, all that sort of stuff, and where you pick, and the angle and the bevel of the pick is not only material. So yeah, sorry for interrupting you there.
No, but it's exactly what you are doing here with your signature guitar and with the Fishman Fluence, and what you said about the technique in playing rhythm guitar. That's a more adorable thing, in my opinion, to play a proper, tight, aggressively played rhythm guitar. Very percussive, like Hetfield. And they do, well, if you
Master
can do...
puppets.
Yeah.
And all downstrokes.
It's all downstrokes, yeah.
And the other thing is, you have to be kind of a drummer to play that. I mean, in Queen, there was a song, I think it was called Sheer Heart Attack. Brian May couldn't play it. Roger Taylor, the drummer, had to play it because he could do the downstroke. You know? So, but this is, the energy is here.
That's exactly what we are looking for in modern amps as well. It's the same principles. We want our attack to be heard. So, which means the driftwood amp, Lasse's design more or less, and Peter Diezel's VH4, that's a blue face here, very early Roland Grapo XL.
Very light blue.
Yeah, it's a very light blue. It has a new faceplate. These amps are meant to be the most, I would say, percussive, aggressive amplifiers if you're looking for rhythm guitar sounds. They have to be tight. You don't need super sub low usually in that mix. Well, if you play 7-string and modern, I don't know, corn stuff maybe, but not for machine gun riffing. And you need attack.
And I think all these high gain modern metal amps, they all sound, the good ones, all sound great for crunch and more traditional stuff too, because the ingredients are all the same, and it's all the same lineage, the same heritage, and they all come from the same kind of circuit. And so if I just dial the gain back here or there, you still get great tones. It's not like, oh, this is a metal amp, it can't do crunch or like rock stuff. So good amp can do it both, I think.
Yeah. And that's what I love about your product, by the way, and that's why I was so positively surprised. I was actually the very first guitarist playing an AMP1 Iridium on stage, right?
Yeah.
At Reeperbahn Festival 2019, and I didn't know the product. I was like, okay, let's do a clinic. Yeah, let's do a clinic. Got the thing, played the first note. What's that? Super tight, super precise. A little more gain than I would actually need, but it's nice to have it on hand. And the principles of metal guitar are more or less always the same. You want it to be tight and bright. You can make it fatter, you can make it mellower easily. But
it has to cut.
It has to cut. If it doesn't cut, well, that's difficult then.
Yeah, for me, the whole metal thing is a challenge too, and that's back to the philosophy of challenges. You know, I have designed my silver one, and I love it, and this, you know, is still everything in order. I'm happy with what I've done, but for me, it was a real challenge to design an amp which is not 100% for my playing style. So I had to learn a little bit about how to play it. But I'm very, very keen on learning how to understand the sound recipe, how you work with the sound, what you need from an amp. But we have two things. You brought a lot of things. You brought the drift amplifier, which is an amp from a guy in East Germany.
Yes, he started out a couple of years ago and sent me like a bunch of prototypes, and we worked a bit back and forth, and he asked me about my opinion, and so did little changes. Like, he's the mastermind behind it. I just had a few comments here and there.
Yeah, but I mean, you're experienced. You know what you want, and as somebody that is first a nerd and second in a studio, you can describe. It's not like I want more.
Yes.
And you
Plus, I've worked on a bunch of amps and modified them, and so I do know a little bit of my way around it. So I wasn't totally illiterate when it came to that.
Right.
So and he was actually, I think, the first. Some other manufacturers are doing it now, but he added a ton of features that are awesome for live and for the studio. For example, he's got a 9-volt outlet, so you can power your pedals from the head. Noise gate integrated, and he's got a tube screamer kind of. I wouldn't call it tube screamer because I guess it's trademarked, but it's like an overdrive
built in. So you don't need a pedal. It's
exactly.
already
so it's got all that
inside the amp.
Included.
Yeah.
And there's two main models. It's the Purple Nightmare, which is like the full-blown flagship, which
100 watts.
100 watts, which is kind of like what started as my amp.
Yeah.
And this is the Mini Nightmare. This is like 50 watts, I think.
50 watts,
you can
6L6.
Exactly. You can get like all sorts of power tubes and combinations thereof. You can get like 6V6 with 22 watts, I think. Then they make a rack version. And so that's the main thing is the Purple Nightmare, and the Mini Nightmare is 2 channels, switchable, high gain, low gain, and different modes in the clean crunch channel. And then I've been a fan of the 5150 kind of presence sizzle, and this was the initial version was very nice and great, but the power amp section was a bit closer to what Diezel does with a very smooth, no fizz high end.
No sizzle.
And so I wanted to add that sizzle, so Marek came up with a circuit to add the sizzle switch.
What for you as a producer, why is the sizzle important? I have my own story, but I want to hear your story.
There's so much going on in the mid-range, in the metal mix especially, the vocals and strings and a lot of the bass, and there's so much going on already, and this sizzle just puts it a bit more to the front without having to make it louder.
Yeah.
It's called presence, so it's kind of presence.
And for me, the vintage guy, you know, I'm blamed to have sometimes a little bit bright guitar sound. I know there's people that tell me, Thomas always with his Strat and then with a single coil and this I want that a bit smoother, a bit more. Okay, I don't mind if I play a Les Paul, and I like it too. But in a live situation, when I have a huge sound with mids are super important. We all talk about mids in any genre, and then the right amount of bass that I can afford in the situation, in the band, whatever I'm surrounded with. When I'm playing a trio, I can have all the bass, which is making sound my guitar huge if I have the top end as well. Yeah. Because then my guitar sound can be like...
It's more 3D and it's not just muffled.
Yeah, and this is like what I like. If my guitar just by itself can sound like a full orchestra, you know, then I can be a good instrumental guitar player. And I had like a drama in my late teenage years when I was in the studio with a Mesa Boogie MK2 B, which was too mid-rangey, having too processed of a sound. It was sounding like the saxophone, but it was not sounding as big like Jimi Hendrix, which was, you know, one of my idols. Where I thought, like, this guitar, if you listen to Voodoo Child on the Electric Ladyland album, not the one that starts with a wah-wah, there's a blues version with the organ. That's the biggest tone of a crunchy blues electric guitar ever heard in my life, and I heard a lot. Of course, it's part is the room of that Electric Ladyland Studios, because you can hear it's 100-watt Marshall, probably his GTM 4500, like more of on the cleaner side, that compresses a lot, and then the whole air in the room. Hey man, this is so big, I get woof. I'm thinking of that tone, and then I think it's drop tuned to E flat or something. It's like it's as big as the sea, you can jump in that tone. You know, it's amazing. That's my reference of how big can a tone be, but it requires a certain amount of sizzle on top. Otherwise, it's like a boring dish that is just flat.
Or it's nasal or woofy.
Yeah. So to me, sizzle is important, and that's something that I also put in my amps on the custom controls on the side. So if some people said, then turn it down. There is a sizzle control. If you put those tone controls anti-clockwise, the sizzle will disappear. If you put it up, there is the sizzle, and the sizzle is also very important to dial in the right amount with the speaker, because some speakers have more presence, have more sizzle than others. And to me, it's good to have something at hand that pushes a dull speaker a bit, in case sometimes you put an amp like this on the cabinet and you need more at hand. That's why I have, I think, enough on tap of that sizzle, but there's also always the option to get rid of the sizzle.
Yeah, and a lot of it just disappears in the mix anyway.
Yeah.
So if you listen to the guitar solo, for example, a lot of people complain about my stuff. It's too fizzy and too thin.
Yeah, but it makes it perfect.
Exactly, that's the background I'm coming from, and a lot of it disappears. It kind of blends with the cymbals of the drums, and so for example, I love mid-range. I think guitars need mid-range. Still, you often see
scoop.
Yeah, I've just scooped the mids a little bit, but I'm using very mid-range pickups. For example, even EMGs, people say they're scooped. They're not. EMGs are essentially just mid-range. Yeah. And then I've got the Tube Screamer, which just boosts the mid-range.
Yeah.
I cut it a little bit in the amp, so it doesn't get too much. Then I've got vintage 30 speakers, which is all mid-range, and mic it with the SM57, which is just mid-range. So even if it don't mix with your eyes. If it's a bit scooped here on the mid, doesn't mean it's a scooped sound. It's still mid-rangey.
And I mean, if what I understand about metal tones is you have the mids more in front of the overdrive, like from the pickups, from the pedal, from the preamp stage, to have that controlled overdrive that is fast, that is not muddy. And then, of course, you need the kind of right post-EQing in the tone stack of the amp to balance the whole thing out again. So to get rid of too much mids.
Exactly. You're feeding a lot of mids into the gain stages, hence compressing them and controlling them. So you've always got your load of mid-range, but it's very controlled. Yeah. And you're cutting bass so it doesn't become too woofy, and you add that later. Yeah. It's actually what as you mentioned, the Mark series, it's kind of what it did. It had like these two EQs, especially the one with the graphic EQ. Right. So what a lot of people did, they just cut the bass, and you often saw the bass 0, 1, or 2, and not higher, because in the Mark series, the EQ, the tone stack is before the gain stages.
The gain stage.
So it's exactly the same thing. You like boost mids, cut bass, and then you edit later with the graphic EQ.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
that's the recipe.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, in the end, it's a balanced sound again. And this is, you know, back to the general theory of something needs to be balanced. It needs to have everything a little sizzle, it needs to have some bass, but the question is where, in which stage do you need how much bass, how, you know, and then it all depends on how much gain you have again. If the more gain you have, the more careful you have to be with the bass. How much? So that's and then if you have less gain, you can afford a little bit more, maybe, and then to me, this is kind of a color range through the whole world of sounds that starts in the vintage world and ends up in the metal world. But, what you add up on gain or on mids in the metal world, you have to balance out on the EQ here. And in the vintage world, you do the same, but in different stages. Yeah. In the end, you have both worlds have a balanced frequency range again, because this is our ears. Anything else would sound like a different instrument.
Or to plug this guy a little bit more, for example, I think amps do make a massive difference, obviously, but people often overlook cabs, I think, and speakers. And I think in this whole chain, guitar side, amp, cab, speaker, and microphone. The amp's probably the smallest part. And as much as I hate to say that, because amps are sexy, amps are just much sexier than this wooden box with 4.
You can even prove it. Just show all the 4 sounds. I just check it and you have a listen.
Yes,
yeah, it's 4 totally
we do that in a
amps.
second. Yeah.
We do that in a second. But the philosophy. By the way, I totally agree. Cabinets. It's to me the electric guitar consists of that piece of wood with the pickups and the electronics. That's one, if you look at an acoustic guitar, this is one side of the whole thing. It's like the strings and whatever vibrates, that's the energy. But then there's the resonance room, kind of the wood which gives the body, which gives the instrument a character and a body. And that's the cabinet. It's the speaker.
It's not only the speaker even. Like, for example, I've got about, I don't know how many cabs in the studio, but let's say 10 with vintage 30s.
And it's all the same speaker.
All the same speaker, entirely different sound.
No, it isn't.
It is.
There are 8, at least 8 vintage 30s.
Yeah, that's
in the market.
Yeah, that's true.
So they are comparable, but
yes, yeah. But
verdict is, and now you go on.
So, for example, I've got just to for example, if you check on my YouTube channel, I've got 2 playlists. I got a bunch, but there's 2 playlists. One, same speaker, same mic, different heads, and then there's another playlist, same head, different cabs. All cabs with vintage 30s, and the difference is bigger with the cabs, and that's just dimensions, mainly dimensions. The Mesa speakers are a bit smoother, but it's mainly dimensions and stuff like that. And people don't want to hear it because it's not sexy to buy cabs, but do buy cabs. And for example, with this guy, a lot of people have always asked me, because of that, for impulse responses. Like this is a modern way to capture a cabinet essentially. And since there's so much in the miking, where you place the mic and stuff like that, I've been asked that a lot. Yeah. So, but I've never done that because I think it's a very personal thing or trademark thing, and I didn't want to give away all my guitar sounds. But as like form to pay back Marek for being that awesome and designing this amp and stuff. This amp actually comes with an impulse response loader loaded with, I think, 12 of my IRs. So it's easy to just record at home. And if you want to try that and just try it out and compare these impulses, you can just switch through them. It's different speakers, different mics, different cabs, and combinations of mics. And they all sound different, but they all sound, well, some might say fizzy, because I want that bite, I need that bite. And so that's a good example of how I think a mix-ready sound should be.
Yeah.
A bit fizzy.
Okay, now we have something. We have your switcher, which is
KHE Audio Electronics. Similar story, really. I wasn't quite as involved, but the guy behind it, he started this company and sent me one of the early prototypes, and I loved it so much. And when I love something, I just share it. So it was the same with the Driftwood, really. Like when I had the amp, I just shared it with everyone. I sent it to, I told producer colleagues about it, I told artists about it, and eventually people started playing it. And the same with this thing. I loved it so much because I have so many amps in the studio, and this just enables me to switch between amps and cabs. So in this case, I connect 4 cabinets, or I have the ability to do so, and 8 amps, and I can just switch between amps or put them on different cabinets. There's a load inside, so if an amp is not on, no speaker needs to be connected. And his company is growing. He's sending those things all around the world now, and a lot of producers are using them, and they're still very fairly priced, I'd say.
Yeah.
For what
I want
they
to
are.
buy one.
Well, I get you guys a contact because they're really, for what they are,
Yeah.
absolutely affordable and awesome quality. And I think we're going to use this in a minute just to switch between amps, and you can see what it does. And what I use it for in the studio is when I've got a band there, what we often do is we record with a sound that we like, and then after we recorded it, we try to beat our own sound. So re-amp through a couple of different heads. And in order to have a real blind test, I just use this, like it's foot switchable or even control it via MIDI from Pro Tools. And so they don't know it's 3 the VH4 or 3 the Driftwood, so they just click through and just pick the amp they like without being biased by whatever amp is behind
You don't know where you plugged into.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that I like. If I do A/B comparisons with different amps, you can fool yourself so much by looking. I plugged into the Mesa. It must sound great, you know, because you are biased so much by your whole experience from your childhood days, from whatever. And I found myself cheating myself while, plugging into whatever a Fender amp, and then something was totally weird, and I played another amp, and I played the wrong licks just because I looked at the wrong amp. And
happens all the time. Like how often as a producer do you tweak an EQ and be, oh, this is much better, and then it's all been bypasses.
It was not even switched
happens
on.
all the time.
Yeah. And I made this experience so often in my life as well. So the only thing that I accept is blindfold test A/B switching.
Not come back the next day if you can.
Yeah, with fresh ears.
The brain is so weird.
Yeah.
We can, for example, the human brain quantizes drums. Like, for example, you hear a drum fill, it's a bit off, and you hear it's off the first time, and you listen to it again, and, oh no, it's actually great, it's on. It's not, but your brain actually quantizes it for you and makes it think it's on. So it's good to be aware of this.
Yeah, for me, the first impression is mostly the most honest one. That's why when I have something important to me, I do that first thing in the morning when my nerve system or whatever is still like a blank piece of paper, and then it's like, oh, that's not good.
After the coffee, though.
Yeah, okay. But for me, it's if I have too much information in my brain already, coming from whatever, I'm losing my sensitivity to that, and my sense to make a hard decision, this is good or it's bad, is the best when I'm fresh. So for me, my working when I was a producer was always I worked long nights tweaking stuff because nobody's on the phone anymore, you don't get any distractions, and you can kind of tailor the mix, you can work on something and blah blah blah, spend hours, and the hours fly, and you have done this, and then you go to bed, and sometimes, of course, you think, I'm great or whatever, and then next morning you think,
it's version 1 you use.
Yeah.
You go back to the first rough mix you did and say,
yeah. And that's what happens a lot. And then the deeper your brain goes into a thing, it's trying to fool you in a way too, that you over polish things and stuff like that. I've been there many times too.
You can notice that a lot if you switch between cabs, for example, because more so than with amps, because cabinets, like the high end is so different sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you switch from a dollar cab or from a dollar mic or miking position to a brighter, you feel like, oh, this is harsh, and then you listen to it for 10 seconds, and then it's great, and then you go to the darker cab, and this is just dull.
Yeah.
So it's all relative, really. So
absolutely, and 1 dB more volume is a lot better sound, because it's like, so, and that's what makes the job. Is it louder? If it's the right frequency, and that's also a judgment you have to take on your mix and on your tone, and that's what most amateur players don't get right, is if they don't know what is the truth in the band or in a record mix.
And you often can't differentiate between volume and sound. So they just ask you to raise the guitar, then they ask you to raise the bass, then you raise the vocals, and then you can't hear the violin, so you raise the violin, instead of just carving space, or in a perfect world, just fix it in the arrangement before
you should have
start
stopped
recording.
after the guitar. Finished.
Yeah, that you know, do your solo record, listen to your guitar for the rest of your life and be happy. Yeah, but that's the thing. Okay, I have we have a couple of questions to Lasse. Do you think that the AMP1 Mercury does have enough low end for a classic but punchy and down-tuned metal tone? So the first thing is, you never played the Mercury, you only played the black.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, just grab your guitar. So no. You play. You plug in here, and now we are on the switcher, and then we can switch between.
I don't know which one the Mercury is though. But
It's the one I showed. Oh yeah.
I can't play down actually. A drop tuning. I always have like. I can't. It's the Mercury now.
Just for the guys to prove. So this is the Mercury with the clean channel. So and now I switch on the reverb. So okay. Now I switch off the reverb. And now we go.
Drop tune.
It's okay. I have to say one thing. Now we are not using the tube screamer anymore.
Right. And we're back into what we said earlier about the Marshall being the great metal amp.
Yeah.
If you listen to a Marshall by itself, it doesn't have like the rectifier low end, but this is totally what would work. Give them the punch. And this is not heavily down tuned, it's just D now, I think,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Okay,
yes.
we can compare this like to whatever. Here's the Iridium. Can we play this? And we can compare this to the Diezel VH4. To the driftwood. Yeah. So I tried a little thing earlier because I liked the driftwood so much. I mean, always I'm
That's a great
challenged. It's a great amp. And you know, the first time I heard, I tried to match the tone of the driftwood a little bit with the Iridium Edition. You play, I switch between the twos, and I tried. Yeah, it's similar. It's not the same.
Well, it's not the same amp, so
It is not the same amp, but
it does to the style pretty well.
And for the guys to understand, I was using the vintage channel with some boost, because you know sometimes you think, I should use the modern channel because I want to play metal.
Oh, I forgot to add the boost here, right? So that's why this was a bit.
Go ahead.
So we had to actually
Challenge me harder.
I'm not
I don't
using-
mind.
no.
Come on. Yeah.
Okay, where do we have it on? So I think actually earlier you matched it to this with the boost on, so it should be closer now.
Whatever.
So this is even closer now. So,
Yeah. Okay. That's. yeah, that's cool.
So that concludes it. Amps don't matter.
Yeah. Hey, what are we doing here? Let's go and have a beer. No, but I totally agree that amps are just one part of the game. They are important, but the cabinets are so underrated. You don't know, but my last 3 episodes, I was just talking about cabinets. I even took the screwdriver and
Wow.
took the stuff apart to show what's inside and what I thought about my cabinets. And I will continue about the cabinet thing, because just there is not enough attention to cabinets. I mean, if you guys would be aware, I have a huge speaker collection in my room next to my studio. I was collecting, you know, me, the vintage guy, I was collecting greenbacks from 1966, from 1967, from 1970. I had 20 watts, 25 watts, 55 hertz, 75 hertz, with the pre-mullet cone, with, you know, greenback. I'm greenback. I have probably a better greenback collection, because the vintage nerd here, than Celestian themselves.
I actually love greenbacks for metal too.
Really?
Just not for too down-tuned stuff, but standard tuning is great.
Yeah.
The mid-range is there.
Yeah, and with the vintage 30s, I have the vintage guy, I have a so-and-so relationship. I like the vintage 30s when they have been beaten to death, when they get broken in, and when the harshness is not there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what is the magic for
guess it's
you,
just-
for metal guys.
It's this nasty, taking your head off kind of thing that really just, it doesn't sound pretty, it's not polite, and that's why it works, I think.
Yeah, okay.
And it's, to be honest, it's easy to mic as well, because it's got a pretty small dust cap, and that makes it much easier to position a microphone compared to, let's say, like a T75 speaker with a dust cap like this.
Yeah.
And also,
It's a 1¾ inch voice coil on the vintage speaker, and if you have the other one, it has the diameter of the voice coil is bigger, and that also makes the speaker stiffer. But I'm all about the small voice coils. If you
Same
ask
here.
me, yeah,
same here. That's why it's greenbacks and vintage 30s, and also, like, a lot of people have by now probably heard it or know it, but even in this same cab, all 4 speakers can sound vastly different. And those little differences, it's the same like what I mentioned earlier with the pickups being, where is it positioned? Everyone talks about, oh, that's that wood, and rosewood sounds like this, and ebony sounds like that, and mahogany sounds like that. But just moving the pickup half a centimeter to the front makes it
such a big
way bigger difference.
Yeah.
And it's the same or similar thing with speakers. As, oh, it's got vintage 30s in it, so it's the same. No, just play something through it at a low volume. Don't ruin your hearing. Play something through it at a low volume. Get your ear or a mic in the same position in front of every speaker, and you're going to hear how different it sounds. And if you take this a step further, a speaker is essentially just a dynamic mic reversed.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same. You've got your moving coil and a magnetic field and the membrane, and the airflow moves the membrane, so the coil moves in the magnetic field. Current voltage is produced in the coil, and a microphone is exactly the same, just the other way around. I actually just described a microphone, so that was a microphone. Speaker is exactly the same, just the other way around.
Yeah.
So what I did, for example, is I got all my 57s and just put all of them in the very same position, just to see which mic is the best one for guitar cabinets and for snare and for stuff like that. So if you get into all these nerdy, deep stuff, that's so interesting, and you can get lost in it, like the guitar pick, like you said earlier, and or tone pot. Different tone pots. If you've got like a 300 in the old Les Pauls or a 500K in the newer ones, and stuff like that makes a bigger difference than. I'm not saying tone wood doesn't matter. Wood does matter, and I think there's a difference, especially in neck wood, but it's small compared to other factors.
Absolutely. And for me, it's the knowledge about which parameter does change things, and which parameter does change 1%, and which parameter does change 10%, and which parameter does change 50%.
Here's one question regarding a parameter. Do you guys have some recording experience with cabs with and without wheels? And that is something I guess Lasse can tell us. But
So depends on your room and a bit. You want to decouple for some tones. You want to decouple the cap from the floor.
Yeah.
And actually, for some of my caps, I leave them on. But I've got a floating floor and like room and room and room and room, and it works great. And in an ideal world, I would use like a like concrete block or something and put it on there, and that works too. But what I often do, and you're going to see that a lot in my videos, and that's actually one question that I'm being asked a lot, is I flip the cab on the side. And people just ask, why are you doing that? Well, just because, like I said earlier, speakers sound different, and I know which speaker on my cab sounds best. And if it's this speaker, I want to mic this speaker, but I want to get it off the ground to reduce comb filtering from reflections of the floor.
Okay.
So I flip it so the mic's here, and hence further away from the floor, so I get less indirect sound, less reflection, less comb filtering. And that's the reason why I often flip my cabs to the side. If you do see my cabs flipped on the side, it means the bottom speakers are the nicer sounding ones, and I want to get it higher.
And there goes your, what's more important, wheels or 10%? You flip, and you,
I take
you
them
want the
off so they
distance
don't
to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't care about wheels.
Yeah.
And here's my experience about 4x12s. Each speaker sounds different. So choose the one that you prefer in the cabinet first. I mean, on my old 4x12, I put a lot of marks on the lovely front grille because I gave a fuck about it. I used them only in the studio. So I have different colors on different speakers where I choose different microphones for different tones. So that particular speaker on that top range, for instance, has a little red mark here where I can place a 441. I can place a 421 over there because the same speaker sounds better with this, and my beloved SM7 fits better on that speaker, on that position, and the good old 57 sits on a different place.
I do a similar thing with chalk. I just mark like the best sounding speaker with chalk.
Yeah.
And some speakers you can take the cloth off, like the Diezel caps, for example.
Yeah.
And I usually have like a little bit of paper, just torn out bit of paper, and then just stick it here, and it says top left, bright, clear, bottom left, dark, muddy or whatever. So I can later come back and know, okay, I want a brighter sound.
What are your preferred microphones?
57, just works. I do like other mics as well, and I often combine them.
Yeah.
But if you can't make a 57 sound good,
right,
don't add a second mic.
Yeah.
I like adding second mics, and I use that like in the queue and stuff.
Yeah.
But so often people ask, I've got these two mics and it sounds like shit. Well, get the 57 to sound great first.
And that's the
then
foundation.
add something else.
That's the foundation. By the way, the same here. Me personally, I also like the Big Brother, which is the SM7B.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works for you guys, but
yeah, I like it.
This is for me the 57 sound, but makes the guitar sound a bit bigger, which helps my Strat because there is like something missing in that lower range that me as the Strat guy wants. I have the extra low band bass from the guitar again, but the lower mids, there's something on the SM7B which became my personal sound. And the 57 always works. Put a 57 in front of a guitar speaker and it sounds like an electric guitar.
Exactly. And another couple of mics I really like is, I'm not using the 421 so often, I use it on toms. I sometimes like to use the R121, it's a Royal Ribbon mic that a lot of people like. But to be honest, I usually prefer the biodynamic M160, because it's a tighter sounding. It just has the tight low end and it blends so nicely.
It's the classic Hendrix thing. It is socialization.
Because the
160 is what you have heard already.
Yeah, it just sounds like the cab in the room kind of, and it doesn't have a proximity effect as big as the R121. Another one, also biodynamic, is the M201. Yeah, the M201, it's a dynamic mic, and it's like a bit wider and bigger sound in 57, and those blend really nicely. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do like blending mics, but 90% of my tones is 57 usually, and then I just blend other stuff in.
Mm-hmm. I have a question here. We really can't answer that, but anyway, what is a Beton Benny? Beton Benny?
I can answer it because I have compared it.
Okay. Oh, good. We have expert.
The Iridium can sound pretty similar to a 5150 Stealth. Yes, that's no problem. I would say try it in the third channel and start without the boost, and then get things right. You can capture that sound pretty okay, actually.
Okay. Yeah,
I've got the regular one and I've got a stealth. I don't have a Iridium at this point. So,
yeah, you can do. I mean, it's something we can do in the future. I would love to.
I like this tone matching stuff, like without really matching post effects, but just trying to get the same or similar sound. It's great.
And for me, that's also, you know, a nice way to see how you guys react on kind of questions like that, you know. Actually, that's something that's on my wish list, to come to your studio one day, because I saw all this.
Always welcome.
Yeah. I mean, it's so far from where I live. You know, this is it's like 750k from here, and this is another 100 to your place. Or how long?
Yeah,
was it
almost.
for?
Yeah, it's about an hour drive. Well, today it was more like 2 hours, but
Yeah, but it's on my wish list. So. And then I have an Iridium, and then we can do the.
Well, but to be honest, I wouldn't try to get the exact same sound. I mean, you could get close, but I don't think you would do it justice, because it would just be a copy of the good sound.
Yeah.
And I think it's more important, like if you're into that style of sound, can the amp, or whatever amp, in this case the Iridium
that
one,
character.
get that style.
That style.
And then I'd rather have 100% from that amp in that style than have 70% matched of another thing. So.
I mean, it's like guitar players. You never are the best to be 100% copy of somebody. If you have character, you shine with your character, and which makes it slightly different. And therefore, there is always room for different amps, for different amp tones, and different players, and different guitars, and.
Yeah, and like the Iridium has totally different advantages. For example, when I tried it briefly and I loved it, but it still wouldn't replace all my tube amps.
No.
So why would it? I've got those tube amps, I'm going to use them. But it's got this awesome sound and other advantages that my tube amps don't have. So I can just grab this, put it in my bag, go to Thailand and record, and have a great guitar sound without having to use a software or something. Nothing against software, I love software. Well, as you guys know. But like this is, for example, an advantage of the AMP1, and I can't put my 5150 Stealth into my backpack.
Carrying bag.
Carry it around.
Yeah.
So I always try to look at things for what they are and what they can deliver.
Sure.
Like what benefit can I have from that?
Maybe we can show that little video from Lasse when he checked out the Iridium in his studio.
Oh yeah.
Takes just a minute. In your studio, we have a question, by the way. Martin Czernoky from the Netherlands. Hi guys, great show. What is your standard gain setting? Do you use volume knob to roll off the gain when playing live, or just one sound mainly? Different lead or backing settings?
I guess that's probably a question for you guys more than for me.
No, I mean, what is your setting on 10 all the way? Done.
Kind of.
Yeah. And when you don't play, you put it on 0.
That's it, yeah.
And you have a gate?
Just roll down.
Yeah.
I've got a gate just to cut down the noise and gaps, but I don't like using gates to make my playing tighter. But just to reduce some feedback and pauses.
Okay, what about you?
Usually in metal shows,
Yeah.
one sound, two volumes. One bridge pickup and a volume potty on the guitar to get rid of the hum
Yeah.
and breaks. No noise gate. If I can get rid of the noise with this here alone, I don't use noise gates.
Okay.
And I just need another master volume in the amplifier or power soak, which I can switch out or something.
Yeah.
Second volume.
Same sound,
It's
second
all-
volume.
yeah.
It's a solar boost.
I mean, that's the VH4, yeah?
Yeah.
Listen to it.
We are.
Is it?
Stand by. Try this.
It is.
Yeah.
That's volume on 3. And it's full on. So why would I need a clean channel then? Not in the metal context.
Yeah.
So volume potty is your friend, yes. But you go full on during metal stuff. There's never a good rhythm metal guitar sound with a volume potty on 9, if you ask me.
Yeah, also tone pot, you don't need it.
Yeah, it's a no.
Love it in the Strat and Les Paul for cleaner stuff, but for metal,
Absolutely. Yeah, for metal, it's
Yep. You don't need them.
it's a proper signal. That's it, and then no signal, clean, which means no noise.
yeah.
Yeah, understood. You want to talk a little bit about the special pickups in this guitar?
It's comparable to what Lasse is doing with his active set of Fishman Fluence. This is a Kloppmann set, the brand new hammer and anvil stuff. And Andreas Kloppmann asked, well, would you like to help with a very modern set? Because I trust what you say about modern sounds. And well, we fiddled around with his HB60, HB59 classic Puff clones and tweaked them so that the pickup is a little tighter, a little more mid-rangey and way clearer. A different kind of wiring, but it's a 9K and an 8.5K neck pickup. It's not overwound, it's not very, very hot. It is a modern approach to a PAF, to a patent applied for classic humbucker. It should be even a tiny bit brighter than the Fishman Fluence. I think we can hear it with one sound. Very gnarly. May I have your guitar? Let's compare. Let's double check.
I grabbed that one.
The Fishman is one of the tightest modern heavy pickups right now. You like them better than EMGs in most cases, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like them too.
Yeah. What I like about this guitar is it is so solid. But again, that's also the wood. When you take the guitar, just the guitar, it is like a massive chunk of wood. I mean, this thing is like, if I hit you with this, you are dead. Nobody survives
One
a
is
hit with this.
really heavy, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part, in combination with the pickups, this makes it so solid. And it makes total sense to me. I mean, that's a character.
yeah, but you get the idea. So this is
Yeah.
a passive set. It does quite the same as the active set without needing a battery. I like them a little better with volume putty roller for the cleaner stuff. It depends.
It's exactly what you said earlier. It doesn't need the output, and that's why it's got all the high end and the
Yeah.
sparkle and the
Yeah.
precision still.
I just want to hear my plectrum. That's all. tight and modern. No bass here. Very mid-range.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's what we need for the precise metal tones, to have a fast tone. So this, by the way, was the
Third channel.
the third channel on the VH4. For me, Mr. Challenge, you know what? I want to
Try to capture the mid-range. That's the quintessential thing with a blue face VH4.
Okay, I want to check my Mercury for that. Can you play something? And I...
At least very similar.
Yeah, I mean, you could tour with this thing compared to this thing, and it's a flick of a switch. And my settings are bass on 7, mids on 4, little scoop, and treble on 4, using the modern channel. So just to give you an impression.
And there was even the Mercury. And
Yeah. This is how it goes. Then I had some guys, they saw this guitar here, which is another thing that makes me happy. It's my first blue guitar. I always liked that color. And this is like also made by Andreas Kloppmann. And the Redict stuff was done by my niece, Leonie, working for him, which is cool. What's this? See, there's some magic numbers, 7800. Nobody knows what that is. Okay, so some secret message for the
number.
Small village.
Yeah. Anyway, this is using nitrocellulose lacquer. I saw the comment. What lacquer is this? So, I mean, it's the vintage kind of thing.
Vintage correct.
Yeah, vintage crack with crackles here and there, and you know all the marks, and then extra paint job, and you know the dirt. It's not as dirty as the white one, but yeah, that's a cool guitar. Wait a minute, before I forget, there is our new Academy of Tone t-shirt, which you get if you order something more than $50, because it's the 50s show, and so we have a super special. That's the sales pitch here. Okay. And by the way, you can choose between the one and this t-shirt. So, nice one. So the other thing I forgot about. Do we have any more questions before we? I think we are over time already. 2 hours and 15. Rennie R. I remember taking the AMP1 Iridium to the first time with me to my colleagues. They laughed at me and then they saw it. Then they cranked it and they told me to never ever do that again. So that's probably the story of this little tiny box can be loud. So yeah, but on the other hand, you know, having a studio with all those different amps, being a professional producer makes sense. And the same with me, you know, in my studio, I have a bunch of the classic amps, like 5 Fender amps and a nice Vox AC30 and a few modern amps, but my focus was always on the vintage Marshalls, and I bought 10 of them just because this one had that and this, but this is my world, this is my voice. And therefore, it makes sense to have several different products, several different amps. There's nothing wrong about that. And I'm happy for everybody that found his voice. And you know, it doesn't matter what brand it is, or whatever guitar brand it is, or what pickups it is. It's a thing that is your personal taste tells you this is the right thing for me. And you know, for me, I just make an offer with my products. If it's the right thing for you, I'm happy. If you found a Fender amp or whatever, a Driftwood amp or a Diezel amp, that's the right thing for you, I'm happy too. That's not a problem. And because Peter Diezel, by the way, is one of the nicest guys.
Definitely.
Back in the days, I remember we were still smoking, me and him, on the flight to the Los Angeles NAMM show. And was it... With him, I remember smoking on a plane. You know, this was vintage days, you know. Hardly to imagine these days. I mean, we don't fly, second, we don't smoke, and third, not in the plane anymore, you know. So, you know, the wild days.
So I've just recently sold one of my own guitars, and the guy later contacted me like the next day or something, said, well, played it and I couldn't put it down, and I wrote new riffs and I wrote a new song. And I think that's what a good instrument does. It doesn't matter what brand it is, but if it inspires you to write a riff or to express yourself, that's what a good instrument needs to do. And I don't care about if it's tube or solid state or digital or whatever. If it inspires you,
that's all what matters. And that's, to me, that's the magic about musical instruments. You take it in the hand and it talks to you in a way that you can interact with the instrument. And I have the wording of it, it's like there's music for me inside. You know, some instruments, they don't talk to me. They might talk to you or to some other people. And some instrument might talk to several more people and they are more sought after. But you know, there's weird shit that is talking to somebody that makes beautiful music with it. So there is a reason for that. And for me, it's a beautiful job to be here tomorrow to shoot 20 different guitars, and some of those guitars are very expensive, some of them are medium expensive, but I would never have the chance to get these instruments in my hands if I wouldn't do that kind of job. And it's always nice to see, and I have no time to prepare. It's not like I've written songs to demonstrate the guitars. You know how I work. It's like, give me the guitar, give me 5 points what it is, and give a fuck, and the rest is like roll tape and see. It
should inspire you.
Yeah, and you
should. One question that I actually like to take.
Yes, please.
Or is it? Yeah, there. Do you miss some all tube tone and or feel in the BluGuitar amp? I think it's this feel thing is hard to put in words. And for example, when Kemper came out, and not everyone, but a lot of people were complaining, but the latency. Well, the latency at that point was like 3 milliseconds. If I sit about this far away from the speaker, I've got more than 3 milliseconds latency just by the speed of sound traveling to my ear. So that can't really be a criteria. So what I did then, in order to, I'm not claiming it sounds exactly the same, Kemper in this case, for example, but what I did then, I did a little comparison video blind test, because I love blind tests, speaker, mic'd amp, and the profile. And I asked people, tell me where I switched to the Kemper.
Yeah.
And they all knew. One said 1 minute 32, the next said at 59 seconds. What I didn't notice, I switched about 10 or 20 times, and no one got it. Everyone had 1 point where I switched, and I switched 20 or 20 times, 10 or 20 times. So in the end, it's a tool. And for like the BluGuitar, for example, if I'm trying to look for a missing tube, tone, or feel, I might be able to hear it, just like I hear the EQ that I tweak and bypass. But no, when I played it, I absolutely did not feel it. And I even, like for example, there's so much good software now. Some might have, there's amp sims that are way better than like the odd stuff 10 years ago. For example, you guys who followed me know that I've got like tone packs with STL tones out, and they've got the Tone Hub, which is a amp software, which then loads presets, producer presets in this case, in my case, similar to what the Kemper does. And I was very skeptical at first, because like we said earlier, I don't want to put my name on something that I don't endorse. So if I wouldn't use it, I wouldn't have my name on it. And same with the Iridium 1, AMP1 Iridium. When I got this to try it out, and by the way, I was not paid for it. I didn't keep the amp. I just
Checked it.
I just checked it and I put a video up and I tried to make it sound good to my ears, my taste. I put it up on YouTube and that's what you heard earlier. And if I wouldn't have liked it, I might have put it up, but it wouldn't have sounded that good. I might have said I don't like it. So no, I don't feel a difference, but I'm not looking for it either. I just grab it, I plug my guitar in it, I try it. If I like the sound, I like the sound, and I don't care if it's tube or solid state or nanotube or software
whatever
made from. I don't care. It's a tool.
The whole mind biasing thing is way too important to distract you from the real thing. The real thing is like, is it working? Is it inspiring you? Does it do the job? And the rest is fairy tales for marketing people.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a full industry.
If a 2,000 euros power cable makes you think you play better and inspires you to write riff, all power to you.
Yeah, but to me, I try to put the whole thing in percentages, as I mentioned earlier. I've been to esoteric guys changing power cables, even on my amp with switch mode, and being biased, I thought I can hear a difference. But the difference I heard was 1%. And there's other things like a guitar cable, I can hear it's 10%.
Yeah, but it's physically, it's graspable. You can actually tell why it is. The
Yeah.
impedance change, the capacity changes.
Yeah, sure. And then, you know, there's a peak of the pickup and the peak will move because the load is bigger and blah, blah, blah. We have some physics to explain it. On the power side, it's like very hard to explain. And I think
Especially if you get like 45 meters of stupid cable in the wall and then 1 meter of...
yeah. I mean, but in the end, you know, if you believe in magic, if that makes you sound better, go for it. Who cares? Yeah. Some people take drugs and play better because they think they play better. Sometimes when they wake up, they play shit, but who cares? I mean, whatever it is that makes you happy, you know, I'm happy for you. And I'm just trying to shed some light on certain parameters and then kind of, you know, double check stuff if I'm totally wrong or see where you are at. And that's the fun, meeting people like you two guys in the industry. And maybe there's some common knowledge we can put together as that kind of consolidates stuff. That is like, okay, I thought about that. If this guy tells me the same thing, and if you tell me the same kind of thing, it's okay. Yeah, that makes tons of, and then it's kind of safer ground. Of course, I have to double check myself. I have to double check the theory again. Otherwise, we are tempted to do the same mistakes again and again and again, and there is no progress. So the only way to progress is to confront yourself with a new challenge. And a new challenge is to aim for something that is better than the stuff you had before. So if it's the playing thing, if it's the tone in your head, if it's a new idea in music, or if it's a new idea of miking up the cabinet and think, you know, I flipped the cabinet around and whatever. Let's give it a try and see if there's progress. And that's the thing. And, you know, the progress for me is having fun with the BluGuitar. If I play this guitar, this is 2 days old, finished, and a little bit of the magic in that guitar is also the mojo that has been put into the guitar being relicked. I don't know if it actually changed the tone, but looking at this guitar makes me feel like I play a vintage guitar. And that's all what it's about. If it looks cool to you, it's fine. But actually, when I look at the guitar, I don't see that much. I just usually put my side on the fingerboard and I don't see the whatever beautiful or horrible marks there. Some people like it, other people hate it, you know. But it makes sense for me. So anyway, it's psychology to Do we have another?
Yeah, that's what we said earlier actually about the overdrive in front of an expensive amp. That's one of those
that's
common misconceptions.
Actually, why we're using €1,000 1980 tube screamer, because it is worth €1,000 nowadays.
See, Woden
Sounds
of
way
the
better
Angels. Like if you go back to about half an hour in, we explain in detail what we're using the overdrive for and why it makes sense to have a $50 pedal in front of a 3,500 quid amp. So yeah, go back to that, watch that, and I think I hope I do explain it there in detail. If not, well, I do at some other place.
Okay, I think we. This was my last note to finish this beautiful episode of Academy of Tone live from Hamburg with Lasse Lammert and Nils Finkeisen in the holy rooms of No.1 Music. To me, it was a big pleasure to have you guys, and I'm ready to do the next nerd talk whenever, wherever.
Anytime.
Big pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed that too. If you have more questions, put it, in the comments, and then we can maybe reply a bit later to that stuff. And don't forget to check out Lasse Lammert's videos, even though you don't want to be a YouTube in a way, but there's a lot of good information on there.
Oh, thank you.
And it's definitely worth checking out. And I'm happy to show some of my audience, people like you, that actually do stuff that is worth it watching it. So check it out. If you're into metal, this is the man. Period. And if you want a t-shirt, get a t-shirt from our store. See you next week when we are back in Saarbrücken. And when I'm totally wasted after playing all these beautiful guitars, I promise you I won't buy one, especially not this one. But I will be so happy to do a video on a guitar that costs more than my car and maybe my house. And it's a historic piece of wood. Not for me, but I can make a video about it, which makes fun for me, and you can watch it on the channel. What is the channel?
No.1 Guitar Center Hamburg YouTube channel. You'll find him every Friday evening, 8 o'clock, 8:15.
Yeah, there's some noise. Anyway, it's been great. See you next time, next week, and take care, guys. Huh?
Thanks.
Cheers.